And our guest tonight is Daniel Schwammenthal, director of the AJC Transatlantic Institute. Good evening, sir.
Delighted to have you with us. So let me just ask, with the most recent Israeli attack on Hezbollah in Lebanon, drones were used, and if I'm not mistaken, a man named Ismail Yusuf Baz was killed. He was a Hezbollah commander. So can we consider this a retaliation, or is it just, you know, the normal exchange of fire between Israel and Hezbollah that was going on before?
I don't think that this particular strike is what may at some point be the direct response to the Iranian attacks. This is part of the ongoing war that Hezbollah started basically on October 8th. Unprovoked Hezbollah, which is an arm of the Islamic Republic, and which started on October 8, unprovoked, to fire at Israel, at Israeli civilians in the north. Close to 100,000 Israelis had to flee their homes, have become internally displaced. And Israel is in an ongoing firefight, a small war with this Hezbollah trying to defend its northern border.
So we're still waiting for the Israeli response to the Iranian attack, right?
Right. As far as I know, that response has not yet come.
Right, but after the latest retaliatory attack from Iran, Israel vows to retaliate again. Now, isn't that escalating tensions, the very thing not Israel nor Iran should do at the moment?
Well, when you are confronting a fanatical regime that is dedicated to your destruction, then restraint, unfortunately, is unlikely to produce de-escalation, as we have seen in the case of Russia. Weakness, accommodation, appeasement, whatever you want to call it, vis-a-vis a radical regime is not bringing peace or advancing human rights, but is only inviting more aggression. So it is, of course, up to the Israeli population and the Israeli government to decide whether and how to respond. But the idea that Israel would be the party escalating it by trying to reestablish a certain level of deterrence against unprovoked attacks from a fanatical Islamist regime is, I believe, a misconception and not the proper
this fanatical regime, as you described it, promised not to conduct any more retaliatory attacks on Israel after the last one. So if Israel wants to respond right now, isn't it escalating the conflict?
Well, first of all, I do not believe that one can trust the words of a regime that hangs and tortures and rapes its own population and has brought terror throughout the entire Middle East. So that would be my first comment. But ultimately, as I said, there is an ongoing war. We just discussed the war against Hezbollah. Hezbollah is, for all practical purpose, really part of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It's not a Lebanese military. It really is an Iranian military. So Iran has declared war basically 40 years ago against Israel. And has been conducting a war against Israel mostly through proxies, but also directly. And on Saturday, for the first time, by firing missiles. So the idea, and it would be fantastic if Israel could now, by ending Iranian aggression against Israel, then fantastic. But I mean, unfortunately, this is not the case. Nobody in Israel wants a war with any of its neighbors, let alone Iran. But unfortunately, Iran, or I should say the Islamic Republic, not the Iranian people, is imposing this war on Israel.
Right. Just a small comment on what you said. Hezbollah is also a political party in Lebanon, right? So we have to keep that in mind. And of course, there is a consensus that Hassan Nasrallah does not want Hezbollah to get involved in the war because, of course, of the dire economic situation in Lebanon, among other reasons, right? That's why they were expanding the front line horizontally to Golan. But anyhow, I wanted to ask you about something else. The project 10-7. What is it? I know that your organization is spearheading it. What does it entail, and what is the mission here?
Sorry, if I may first answer to what you said. You said Nasrallah doesn't want a war. Well, Nasrallah has already started the war. Since October 8, Hezbollah has fired by now hundreds, if not thousands, of rockets against Israeli civilian villages and cities. Many Israeli civilians have already died. So it is simply factually not true that Nasrallah doesn't want a war, and Hezbollah is also, well, maybe it is also politically active. But basically, every terror organization is also politically active, and Nasrallah and the other Hezbollah leaders have publicly stated that there are no two separate organizations. There is not a political and military arm. Hezbollah itself says there is only one Hezbollah. As to October 7th, that is not my organization.
Just let me counter that. I mean, of course, we all sort of had this shared understanding that these exchanges of fire on both sides, Israel and Lebanon, or Hezbollah, shall I say, because it's of course not the Lebanese army, are sort of, very controlled. So, of course, on the brink of perhaps going further any day or any minute, that's the risk. But civilians died on both sides. On both sides, civilians were displaced. And of course, it is a problem. I'm not trying to argue here in favor of Hezbollah, just saying that that the situation sort of seemed a little theatrical, one could say, right?
Theatrical? I wouldn't use
Well, I don't
that
think
word.
that neither the Israelis that have been displaced, nor the poor Lebanese people who did not ask Hezbollah to start this war would find this very controlled. This is a horrific situation. It could get even worse. You're right. It could get much worse, but this is already a war, and I think the world needs to realize that this is not a normal or acceptable situation. I don't think that it would be acceptable for Poland to have, which is a much bigger country with a much larger population, to have 100,000 people displaced and every day rockets fired on its territory. This is already a war that Hezbollah started. Hezbollah is an arm of Iran. So we really need to be very, very precise with the facts. There is a war that has been imposed on Israel by Hezbollah and its Iranian puppet masters.
Right, now this war is not serving well the Israeli public image, and therefore I'd like to ask you to comment on the words by Jordanian foreign minister who claimed that Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to distract the public opinion from Israel's operation in Gaza by escalating conflict with Tehran. What's your comment on that?
Well, I think those comments are misguided. Again, Iran has been waging war against Israel for over 40 years. Israel and Iran don't even share a common border. And actually, historically, there have never been really any animosity between Iranian people and Israel or the Jewish people. If we go back to antiquity, as you know, before the rise of the mullahs, Iran and Israel had very close relations. So the idea that Bibi Netanyahu or anyone in Israel would start a war with Iran in order to distract or for political reasons is simply absurd. Again, This is a war that Iran and its proxies have started 40 years ago. Over the last 6 months, they have accelerated the war, first with the October 7 attacks by Hamas, which has been funded by Iran, but on the very next day with attacks from Hezbollah, attacks from Iranian-supported militias from Iraq, who have been firing missiles from Iraq, with attacks from the Houthis, which are again also an Iranian-sponsored Shiite terror group, who have been firing missiles at Israel and international shipping. So the idea that Israel is trying to distract from anything is unfortunately, or is simply absurd.
Right. I also need to ask you, because you have a degree in law, so I need to ask you about the legal aspect of Israeli strike on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. Was it lawful?
Well, I have a degree in European law, but not in the law of armed conflict. But I have tried to educate myself about the situation. So first of all, it is unclear whether this was indeed part of the Iranian consulate and not indeed simply buildings next to it. But even a consulate loses its protected status if it is used for military purposes.
In a third country?
In a third country? Yes, in a third country. Indeed, as well, they lose their protection, and there is not even the Iranians deny that the people who were killed were IRGC commanders. It was a very public funeral for these people, and these people are the ones directly controlling Hezbollah and Hezbollah's current attacks against Israel, which have been ongoing for 6 months. He is directly responsible for the entire militias, Shiite militias in the Levant, including those in Iraq who have attacked American forces and killed Iraqi American soldiers. Not to even speak about the October attack. So the idea that this would be a violation of international law is ludicrous.
Right, Daniel Schwammenthal, director of the AJC Transatlantic Institute, was our guest tonight. Thank you so much.